You ever notice how adults suddenly turn into tiny United Nations peacekeepers the moment two children want the same toy? One kid is happily playing. Another child walks over, grabs for it, and within 3 seconds, some exhausted adult appears out of nowhere saying, "Come on now, sharing is caring." Meanwhile, the first child is standing there gripping that toy like it's the last helicopter leaving the country. And honestly, sometimes I don't blame them. Because somewhere along the way, a lot of us started teaching children that being good means being immediately available to everybody else's wants. Your snack? Share it. Your toys? Share them. Your space? Share it. Your time? Share it. Your comfort? Well, don't make things awkward. Then, those same children grow into teenagers who can't say no without feeling guilty. Teenagers who lend out hoodies, money, passwords, homework answers, emotional energy, all while quietly resenting everybody around them. And parents miss the connection completely. See, I'm not against generosity. I'm against raising children who think kindness means surrender. Because there's a very big difference between teaching a child to be compassionate and teaching them they're not allowed to have boundaries. I remember watching a little boy at a birthday party years ago. Couldn't have been older than 4. Tiny little thing. Spider Man sneakers, sticky cupcake fingers. The kid was sitting in a corner, completely locked into this toy dump truck like he had construction contracts to fulfill before sunset. Then another child walked over and wanted it. Now, nothing unusual there. That's childhood. Childhood is basically small humans emotionally negotiating over plastic objects while adults pretend not to lose their minds. But here's where it got interesting. Before either child even had time to figure things out naturally, 3 adults jumped in like emergency responders. Share with your friend. Be nice. Come on, don't be selfish. And the little boy froze. That's the part people miss. He didn't scream, he didn't hit anybody, he didn't throw a tantrum. He just looked confused, like someone had suddenly informed him ownership was now a criminal offense. Then came the nervous smile. Oh, I've seen that smile 1,000 times. The smile children use when they realize adults care more about social smoothness than about what they're actually feeling. So he handed over the truck. And every adult around him acted like we had just witnessed an act of moral greatness worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize. Good job sharing. Meanwhile, the child looked miserable for the next 10 minutes. Now, here's the uncomfortable question most people avoid. Was that generosity or social pressure? Because those are not the same thing. A lot of adults accidentally treat sharing like a moral emergency. We panic the second one child is disappointed, especially in public. Nobody wants the awkwardness. Nobody wants another parent thinking their child is rude. So we rush to force equality before children even learn emotional regulation. But psychologically, young children don't experience ownership the way adults think they do. To a small child, possession creates emotional security. That toy they're holding, in their brain, it represents comfort, control, predictability, autonomy. And children are still developing all of those systems. That's why toddlers can act like you've destroyed civilization because you moved their spoon 2 inches to the left. Their world is small. Control matters deeply to them. And this is where adults unintentionally create confusion. We tell children, you're allowed to have feelings. You should use your words. Your body belongs to you. But then the second they say, I don't want to give this away right now, we override them instantly. Imagine somebody walking up to you while you're using your phone and another adult saying, well, sharing is caring. Let them use it. You'd look at them like they escaped from a laboratory. But somehow, when children feel possessive, adults suddenly become philosophers about generosity. Now, obviously, we don't want to raise tiny dictators guarding crayons like ancient treasure. That's not the goal. The goal is balance. But real generosity develops best when children feel secure enough to choose it freely. And research on child autonomy backs this up over and over again. Children who feel safe having ownership and boundaries tend to become more cooperative naturally over time. Why? Because generosity feels safer when it isn't forced out of you under social pressure. That's the irony parents don't realize. The more a child feels emotionally respected, the less defensive they usually become. But when children constantly feel overridden, they often become more territorial, more anxious, or quietly resentful. And you can actually see it happen in real time at family gatherings. One child clutches a toy tighter the moment adults begin pressuring them to hand it over. Not because they're evil masterminds, because now the situation feels threatening. Adults see selfishness. The child feels loss of control. Big difference. By the time those children become teenagers, the problem changes costumes. Nobody's fighting over dump trucks anymore. Now it's hoodies, chargers, money, homework answers, makeup, gaming accounts, emotional labor, privacy, time. And this is where parents suddenly get confused. They'll sit there wondering why their teenager keeps getting used by friends while accidentally rewarding the exact behavior that made it happen in the first place. I once knew a quiet 13-year-old girl named Emily who reminded me of every child adults describe as such a sweetheart. Very polite, very agreeable, never wanted conflict. Teachers adored her because she never pushed back on anything. Sounds wonderful on paper. In reality, that child was exhausted. Emily lent things constantly at school: hair clips, chargers, notes, snacks, jackets. If somebody forgot lunch money, she gave hers away. If classmates wanted answers, she helped. If friends demanded attention at midnight through group chats, she stayed awake responding because she was terrified somebody would think she was mean. And the worst part? Adults praised her for it nonstop. She's so generous. She's so mature. She's just the sweetest girl. Meanwhile, her belongings kept coming back broken, or missing, or not coming back at all. And every time she felt upset about it, she immediately felt guilty for being upset. That's the dangerous part right there. Some children are not naturally generous. Some children are deeply afraid of rejection. Those two things can look identical from the outside. A lot of people pleasing behavior starts shockingly early. Children learn very quickly which behaviors earn approval, avoid tension, and keep adults happy. If a child notices that saying yes gets smiles and saying no creates disappointment, awkwardness, or criticism, the brain starts adapting around social survival, especially during adolescence. Teenagers are biologically wired to care intensely about peer acceptance. Their brains are literally going through major social development changes. Approval feels enormous at that age. Rejection feels catastrophic. That's why peer pressure works so well on middle schoolers. Half of them are emotionally one awkward lunch period away from believing their life is over. And kids who were never allowed healthy boundaries when they were younger often struggle the most here because they don't know the difference between kindness and self erasure. So you get teenagers who lend expensive things they can't afford to lose, say yes when they mean no, get dragged into drama they hate, share private information to keep friends, or tolerate disrespect because confrontation feels terrifying. Then parents look at the situation and say, "Why didn't you just speak up?" Well, maybe because for years, speaking up got interpreted as selfishness. That conditioning runs deep. And let me tell you something uncomfortable. Manipulative people recognize these children immediately. Oh, they absolutely do. The overly compliant teenager becomes the unofficial therapist friend, the backup plan friend, the one constantly borrowing emotional stress from everybody else. The child who keeps giving second chances because guilt feels worse than exhaustion. You can even see it in small school interactions. A teenager fake laughing when someone crosses a line. A kid agreeing to things they clearly don't want to do. A child handing over belongings while their face quietly says, "I hope this comes back." And adults often mistake that discomfort for maturity. No, sometimes it's anxiety wearing good manners as a disguise. Now, none of this means children should become rude little emperors ruling the household with an iron fist and a juice box. Boundaries without empathy become entitlement. That matters too. But healthy boundaries are not selfishness, they are psychological safety systems. A teenager who can calmly say, "No, I'm not comfortable with that," is not difficult. That child is protected. And honestly, in today's social environment, that skill may save them from far more than a missing hoodie. The funny thing is, the parents who fear raising selfish children are usually the very parents raising the kindest kids in the room. They care deeply. They want respectful children, empathetic children, flexible children. Nobody wants to be the parent of the kid who growls over a bag of chips like a raccoon protecting stolen treasure. But somewhere in all that good intention, a lot of parents accidentally teach constant emotional surrender instead of generosity. And children can feel the difference immediately because real generosity feels good. Forced generosity feels humiliating. That's why the goal is not teaching kids to never share. The goal is teaching them that kindness and boundaries are supposed to exist together. And honestly, one of the simplest parenting shifts is also one of the hardest for adults emotionally. Stop treating every no like a behavioral emergency. Sometimes a child saying, "I'm still using this," is not disrespect, it's communication. Children need language for boundaries long before adolescence arrives, and suddenly everyone's panicking about peer pressure and toxic friendships. Little phrases matter. "I'm not ready yet." "You can have it when I'm done." "I don't want to share that one." "Maybe later." Those responses teach children something powerful. You are allowed to have limits without becoming a bad person. Now, of course, context matters. If a child refuses to let guests touch a single toy while demanding access to everybody else's belongings like a tiny dictator running an unfair trade agreement, that's a different issue. Then you guide empathy, reciprocity, and cooperation. But forcing immediate surrender every single time teaches the wrong lesson, too. One parenting strategy I've always liked is separating community items from special items. Community items are things everyone can reasonably take turns using: balls, board games, sidewalk chalk, shared snacks. Special items are personal comfort objects or belongings the child genuinely values. Maybe it's a stuffed animal, a favorite tablet, a prized drawing kit, or some strange plastic dinosaur they've emotionally bonded with for reasons only children and scientists will never fully understand. Those items should sometimes be protected because ownership security actually reduces panic. Children become more relaxed sharing when they know not everything is constantly at risk of being taken away for social approval. And parents also need to stop performing generosity for other adults. Oh, this happens constantly. A child says no politely, and suddenly the parent feels embarrassed because another mother is watching nearby, like she's silently judging the entire bloodline. So the parent overrides the child to appear socially graceful. "Go on, let her use it. Don't be rude. Share nicely." Meanwhile, the child learns an important hidden lesson: other people's comfort matters more than your boundaries. That message follows children far beyond playgrounds, into friendships, into dating, into workplaces, into adulthood. And here's the irony nobody talks about enough: children who feel secure saying no often become more generous over time, not less. Because generosity rooted in freedom creates empathy. Generosity rooted in pressure creates resentment. There's a massive psychological difference there. One creates emotionally healthy people. The other creates exhausted people smiling through discomfort because they think that's what good children do. And honestly, some adults still haven't recovered from that conditioning themselves. You can see it everywhere. Grown people apologizing for setting normal boundaries, lending things they can't afford to lose, saying yes to avoid guilt, feeling responsible for everybody's emotional reactions. That training started somewhere, usually early. So, no, your child is not selfish for wanting privacy, ownership, space, emotional safety, or the right to say, not right now. Those are human needs. The real goal is raising children who are compassionate without becoming emotionally available to everybody at their own expense. Because one day your child is going to need the confidence to say, no, I'm uncomfortable. I don't want to. That doesn't work for me. And if we only praise children when they constantly surrender themselves for approval, we shouldn't be surprised when they struggle to say those words later. If this topic hit home for you, I genuinely love to hear your experiences in the comments. Were you forced to share constantly growing up? Do you think it helped you become generous or just guilty? And how are you handling this with your own kids now? I read a lot of your comments personally, and honestly, some of the stories you all share are better than half the parenting books out there. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more real conversations about parenting, adolescent psychology, boundaries, behavior, and the strange emotional obstacle course we call raising children. At the end of the day, teaching children kindness should never require teaching them that their feelings, comfort, or boundaries don't matter. A child who says no respectfully is not automatically selfish. Sometimes they're learning ownership. Sometimes they're protecting emotional security. Sometimes they're simply trying to feel heard in a world where adults make decisions for them all day long. And the truth is, children who learn healthy boundaries early often grow into teenagers and adults who are actually more compassionate because their kindness comes from choice, not guilt. That's the difference. We don't want children who hoard everything and refuse empathy, but we also don't want children who feel responsible for keeping everybody happy at their own expense. Real emotional health lives somewhere in the middle. So the next time your child hesitates before sharing, maybe pause before rushing into share nicely. There may be a bigger lesson happening underneath that moment. If this video connected with you, tell me in the comments. What were you taught about sharing growing up? And do you agree with it now as an adult? I may personally reply to some of your stories because these conversations are always fascinating. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into parenting, teenage behavior, emotional development, and the psychology behind the habits we accidentally pass down generation after generation.